Chair Willis.
Present.
Vice Chair Peace.
Present.
Board Member Bauer.
Present.
Board Member Eggleston Sislowich.
Present.
Board Member Hendrick.
Present.
Board Member McKinnon.
Present.
Board Member Weimer.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have any oral communications from the public for items that are not on our agenda?
I don't see any raised hands at the moment. We have two public attendees, but they haven't raised their hands.
Okay, thank you. And then do we have any agenda changes, deletions, or additions that we want? Does anybody have anything?
None from staff.
Okay, none from me. So let's move on to our schedule of meetings. Amy, do we
Sure.
need to talk about that even?
We can, yes. Just one important item is, as you know, the Omicron starts to fade into the rear view, hopefully. We are planning to go back live in person for all of our board and commission meetings in March. So if you all are looking at your calendars, March 10th and 24th are the next meetings in March, and they will be in person in the council chambers. We had some training to get this done. We're going to be doing hybrid meetings so that the public can still attend remotely, but board members are expected to attend in person. So, you know, that's a consideration for everyone if we are going to go with 2 meetings per month to tackle items. And let's see, what else? As far as what's upcoming, we have one item that is an actual project, and that is a commercial building in the downtown that is set for March 24th, that meeting. And then we don't have any other projects other than the board's work plan and items. So,
What's the address on the downtown project, Amy?
526 Waverly.
Oh yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
And Dave, I apologize that the Mills Act has fallen off our agenda for this week, but let's do that the first meeting in March. And Amy and I have discussed this, and we feel like the best use of our staff time is to have basically the first meetings in the month be basically our committee reports that we could handle on our own. And if there, and so we wouldn't be dependent on getting any staff reports for those. And then our second meetings, we could refer anything we need information about the staff, and we can act on any items that come through the city. So hopefully a lot of our committee reports we can, and the way we want to move forward, we can determine in those first meetings in the month, and then we can do action items in the second meeting of the month. But I'm hoping we can meet twice a month and actually get some things done in 2022. So nothing else on the agenda. I mean, nothing else on the schedule. So let's move.
Carolyn?
Yes.
There are 3 dates that I will not be in town.
Okay.
May 26th, July 14, and October 13th. Maybe more in August, depending upon fires.
Okay.
So I will send an email to Amy.
Thank you.
And just to get that on the record, if that is an issue.
Okay, sounds great. And if anybody else knows they have dates they won't be around, please let Amy know. So let's move on to our public hearing on 567 Hale. Amy, will you guide us through?
Sure, I'm going to upload the presentation, and I'll be introducing our staff member who I believe you all have met before, Danielle Condit, who is helping on the Historic Preservation Program. She's one of our planners, and we also have members from the Page and Turnbull team who are helping us on this project, and many more. But they will be here for questions and can contribute to the conversation. Give me a moment, please.
Also, welcome to Greg Tanaka, our council, I presume our council representative for this season.
Yeah, I just got,
yes.
yeah, thank you. I just got assigned. Sorry, it was a little bit tough to figure out how to join. Usually I get a calendar invite with Zoom information, but it wasn't there this time. So I was busy looking it up. I can only join as an attendee, but thank you, whoever, for promoting me to this. And I look forward to being the council rep this year. And so just wanted to invite, first of all, thank you all board members for your guys' work and service. I know it's a lot of work, it's important work. And so as council rep, I want to just extend to all you guys, if there's anything I can do to help you guys in terms of doing your work and doing it better, let me know. Here's a resource, so reach out to me. And also, for the chair, I would love to have some sort of regular sync up with you. But anyways, yeah, just happy to be here, and thank you guys for your service.
Welcome, and thank you for attending. So I'll go ahead and proceed and upload the presentation now. Share screen. Share. Okay. Everybody seeing my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
we can see the presentation.
Thank you. Wasn't sure if I was on mute. Okay, today we have two items on our agenda. The first is 567 Hale, a single family home that's a Category 2 resource on the city's local historic resources inventory. This is an older shot of the home back in the day. The order today for this item will be staff's presentation, then we'll have the applicant presentation, and then the board members can ask staff questions of the consultant, Page and Turnbull, who is in attendance, and the applicant. And then we can have comments and recommendations for the project. The first note is to clarify that the review process we're in for a single family home that is only subject to a building permit rather than a discretionary process such as the individual review process for two-story homes or a variance or something. This is a ministerial building permit process, but because it's a Category 2 outside of the downtown, we do conduct a review of this, and it is subject to the Historic Resources Board review should staff determine that these alterations are not minor and they would adversely affect the exterior. You can see here what was pulled from the code. So we've been in a process for a little bit with the applicant and the applicant's architect, and that process has been to engage with review of the proposal. It started off with the character defining features memo and proceeded to look at concept plans, note where there is non-compliance with the standards, and work towards compliance with the standards. So as noted, the HRB is enabled by our municipal code, chapter 1649, to review exterior alterations this is a Category 2 resource. So asking questions, and as noted, the consultant is here for in-depth discussion, as is the project planner, and I will turn it over momentarily to our project planner, Danielle. Danielle provided this list of all the items, and I don't know, this is in the report, so we can come back to this if anyone would like to review in the detailed scope. And we have some images here from the plan set showing befores and afters of the 3 elevations, the front and sides. Before on the left, after on the right. Hard to see in this image, but hopefully you all got plans. And then we have the rear elevation, which has a noteworthy change there. And from before on the left and after on the right. We had later in the process of reviewing the concepts, we had a proposal for a structural upgrade, and our consultant was able to offer some recommendations about how to execute any of these because there's a stucco exterior. So here is the portion of the bulletin, we call it the bulletin, that the Historic Resources Board adopted, approved back in October of 2016. What we're dealing with here is a Group A resource. And so this has what the process is. This was also in your packet to help the board understand the guidance that was adopted for staff to handle exterior alterations to these residences and resources. So Danielle, did you want to introduce? I can stop sharing my screen. I know we have the applicant has a presentation, and Danielle, did you want to introduce the applicant?
Yes, hi everyone, nice to meet you all. And you know our applicant very well. It's our very own Margaret Wimmer here. I'll go ahead and give her the controls and she can go over the project scope in depth.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to just start a PowerPoint to share with you. So on behalf of the clients, Chelsea Sun and Michael Powell, I'm here to discuss the alterations that we're planning for 567 Hale Street in Palo Alto, which is, like you know, it's a Category 2 historic resource. With any project of this nature, it's a balance. So we look at the long-term goals of the house in terms of the infrastructure that's existing, and being sensitive to the historic nature of the house. But in terms of the infrastructure, the house is largely original in terms of the plumbing infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure. There's still some single glazed wood windows that are in kind of a bad shape at this point. There's little to no insulation. We want to upgrade the HVAC, the thermal quality of the house. So there's a lot of just necessary factors that we go through when we take on these projects, because we really want the house to last another 100, 200 years. And I think this is an opportunity now to take some of these measures in order to protect it in that sense. And anytime we can do waterproofing, structural upgrades, anything that will just endure the longevity of the house is one of our primary goals. Another thing that obviously is happening is that we have a new owner who has every owner has, a different lifestyle, a different concept of living, a different aesthetic. And so we are actually making some changes that respond to the new owner's wishes in terms of making it a little bit more modern and contemporary, but contemporary meaning of today. We're not making the house modern in the sense of an architecturally modern project. We're just upgrading things as what's available today and what's kind of popular today. This is, I just thought I would go through with a little bit more detail on our design methodology of some of the choices we made to the exterior. This is the front facade, as you know, and in this, we're retaining everything on the front that you see here. This aperture opening here was the original front porch.
Margaret? I'm sorry, I have to stop because I'm not seeing your slides advancing.
Oh, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah,
please move this window away from the shared application.
yeah, it's
Can
at
you
the top.
So I'm sorry, what do I do then? Stop share and then resume share.
Yeah, you're
Can you see
sharing,
that?
but you're sharing the thumbnails on the left, and you are moving along the thumbnails, but the first slide appears to be. Oh.
Maybe I'll just do it like this. Can you see when I advance it this way?
Yes. Did
you see this slide that I was on for a little while, or were you stuck on the first one?
Okay, maybe I'm seeing things incorrectly from my view. Sorry to interrupt.
Margaret, you were stuck on your last slide actually.
This one?
The last slide of your presentation is where you were on for the last couple minutes. I think it was fine. Like,
I'll just stay in this mode if everyone can see this mode, and I won't do the slideshow. Yeah. Is that fair?
That looks fine.
Okay, I'll do it. Simple is better. I love simple. So I already went through the slide. I don't know if you saw it or not. So this is the front of the house, obviously, and you've all seen that. And what I was talking about was this aperture here, which is an inset of the original front porch, which was, you could clearly see that in one of the historic photographs that Amy just shared with us. And then, so at one point, a prior owner had enclosed this front porch and put in these very non-historic French doors that I think they probably just got at Home Depot or something. They're your basic wood single glaze French doors and closed in that space. So this is the one change that we're making on the front. Here's a view of those windows from the inside, and you can see how the door on the inside, the French door, it doesn't relate to the outside or the inside. It's just someone just sort of selected it and put it there. It doesn't relate in scale or quality. And so we are changing that. We are wanting to fill in that space a little bit more with a very simple French single entry door, glass entry door with side lights and transoms above, to largely just have it all glass and to allow as much light as we can have come in. This is the configuration of the door. And then this, as you can see how I've shown what they call the jam shaft pilasters, the shaped jam shaft pilasters that are on the exterior. And the window will better relate, we think, to the horizontality of these existing windows here. It'll better relate to that. And then on the side, as you can see, these are also openings to that space that was an original front porch. This is a non-historic leaded glass window that we will be replacing with a new window. We wanted to put windows in both openings. However, and this is the drawing of that solution. There's a little bit of a challenge in this space because the front door is inset, the front door that you don't really see this because this is the side elevation. But if you see these two vertical dashed lines, that is actually the placement of the wall where the front door is going to be, the new front door is going to be where the existing front door is now. So that really limited that kind of narrowed our opportunity to put windows in both of these openings. So this was our solution on that. That's the driveway side. Otherwise, no changes on the driveway side. Other than that, this is a photo of the rear area of the house and the driveway side, as you can see. And this, because it's the rear facing facade, obviously you can't see it from the street. We made the most significant change on the rear. So what we've done, just to further explain, these two windows here were introduced with a remodel a couple of years ago. Those are non-historic windows, those will be removed and filled in. This is where the change is going to occur here, where we are proposing to put in a 16-foot wide sliding door. So with that, we are eliminating the single entry door here and the two smaller flanking windows that are represented with dash lines. And also in the sunroom, we're taking out this center. You can't really see it in this photo very well, but we're replacing those with replica windows anyway, because those are some of the single glazed wood windows that are really in a state of disrepair, because we are replacing them with replica windows, which is a replica window is going to be an exact replica in shape, size, mullions, breakup, everything. But we're just taking out this one center window and offering a door, because there's a kitchen very close to that, and the owners want better access to the dining terrace, which is what this is going to be. And then on the side, this is the interior side, the southeast side. This is the facade that used to face Hamilton Avenue, because we believe that the Hamilton Avenue property that's there on the corner was the front yard of this house. So this was obviously an entry door that goes into the living room. It is still a French door, as you can see, but there's no landing, there's no steps up to it, there's no safety measures there. So we feel like having a door there the use of that door has already been eliminated because there's no steps up to it. So we are proposing to keep the same aperture opening, keep the same style and look, but replace it with a window just for safety measures. It just makes them feel a lot more comfortable if that's not an operable door. So there's that change, which is occurring here on the drawings. That is now a French door, and we're making it into a window. And then the other change we're proposing is to remove this existing window in the existing dining room that's indicated by these dash lines, which is not an original window. That window has been replaced, but we are proposing to remove that and introduce new smaller windows. And the purpose of this is because that's a kitchen, and these new windows will flank, a hood and a range. And so that's our solution there. So those are primarily the exterior changes to offer you a little bit more insight into what our thought process was. And another thing that we've discovered with this house, because it has a basement and an attic, so essentially it has 4 floors. We have, investigated it with our structural engineer very carefully, and we've identified some real structural vulnerabilities of the house. In the basement, as you see here, there's 2 relatively big open spaces in the basement, and you would have to refer to the packet to the floor plans to see where these posts occur. But this is the space that we're hoping to use as like a home theater space. So there are 2 posts in this space, and I think there's 1 post in what we're calling the exercise space. So there are these big open spaces in the basement that are essentially being supported by 2 posts on one side of the house and 1 post on the other side. So that alone is, we feel like that's a vulnerable point. And we've also looked into the foundation, and we see that the concrete down there is only about 2 inches thick. So we just feel like, hey, is there something that we can do to ensure that the structural integrity is definitely intact? Obviously, if we were to build this house today, we would do, much more extreme structural measures. But since we're remodeling, it's an opportunity to upgrade the structure, make it more structurally sound. And then also, this is a picture of the attic, which I don't think the attic was ever finished out. Originally, it was probably just a traditional open attic. They did introduce a new stair here at one point, and then they did introduce these dormers at one point. So this is also, when our engineer went up there, his mouth kind of dropped and said, "What's supporting the roof?" Because there's no steel or anything up there. And then there's this really heavy pool table right in the middle. So I guess my point here is that we see some vulnerabilities. That has also prompted us to look into a structural shear wall upgrade. So on the exterior or on the interior, wherever we can, we're trying to introduce new shear walls that will also strengthen the house for, for years to come. So and just there's always an impact anytime we remodel. And we are trying to be very sensitive because this is a historic resource, but it will be impacted with the remodel because it will be altered. We're just trying to minimize the apparent alterations. And our hope is to create a longevity factor. There are some more contemporary amenities that we are introducing to the house, primarily on the interior. We did that in kind of a careful way that was really driven by the clients and something that they felt very strongly about. So, and we just feel that, the original application for the project, we did it, what I call it was the kind of the full ask, like we asked for everything. And clearly that was not compliant. So thanks to Paige and Turnbull, who was able to review that and get us back on the right path. So we feel like now we're on the right path. The application that we have submitted has been reviewed and has been deemed compliant with the SOIS, the Secretary of the Interior Standards. And we feel like with that, we are confident to move forward. And, we think the project as presented is sensitive and careful, but it also has the longevity factor involved and the safety factors and the structural integrity factors that we're trying to build in. So today we're really fortunate to have Michael Powell with us, who is the homeowner and the ultimate applicant. And I would like to turn it over to Michael for a moment or two. He might have some words to share from his perspective. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Margaret. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining on this wonderful Thursday morning. So my name is Mike Powell. My family and I have lived in Palo Alto for the last 4 years. Right now, we live right near Duveneck Elementary. I have a son who's 4, a daughter who's 2, and they basically have spent their whole lives here. And if my wife and I are lucky enough, we'll continue to spend our time here until they grow up, they go to high school here, and then hopefully we can get them off to college at some point. My wife and I love this community, and we've really fallen in love with this home. We love the idea of being stewards for a piece of Palo Alto history. Love the home's formality, its majestic quality. And really, when working with Margaret and our plans, our goal is to maintain this historical resource for the community. And we try to maintain the facade, especially the more prominent front, as well as the driveway views. But at the same time, really balancing our desire to rehab parts of the home to fit the needs of our family with 2 growing little kids. And so I think we've gotten to that point. Wanted to thank everyone who helped us think through that process, including Paige and Turnbull. The initial feedback was very helpful, and at least it was interesting for me to work through this process and to understand what it means to maintain and own a piece of history. And so thank you for the opportunity today to discuss our project at 567 Hill. Looking forward to hearing your comments and being the best caretakers of the home for the next phase of its history. So thanks. That's it from me. I don't know what's next.
So do we want to move on to board member questions, or Amy, do we have another thought?
Well, there are no further presentations. As I noted, our consultants are at the ready if there are questions for the consultant or of Danielle, the project planner.
I have questions.
Board member Bauer.
Thank you, Margaret and Mr. Powell, for the presentation. I've been in this house, and of course, a former board member, HRB member Debbie Shepard owned it, as everyone here I think knows. This is an exquisite and extraordinary example of a house 100+ years old, almost untouched, but maintained and preserved. So obviously with that said, I had a couple of questions about how this project moves forward in terms of the original character defining features, which have been adequately detailed by the Page and Turnbull reports. Let's start with structure, because that's the biggest, I think, going to have the biggest impact on this project. Quick question, are the structural walls that affect the exterior walls going to be placed inside or outside? That will have a difference in terms of how that heavy dash finish is preserved and prepared.
Is that a question for me, David?
Yeah, sure, anybody. I assume it's for you.
Yeah, so that's pretty intense conversation that we're having now between the contractor, the city, and our clients. We did, I think in your packet, there was a page where I was showing graphically I think it's on packet page, oh my gosh, I even have my glasses on and I can't see it. 2.0, I don't know, it's this page here.
Yeah, that's,
see
oh,
there,
right.
I just thought this would be a good graphic to show those shaded areas, but that's two sides, and here's these shaded areas are where we've identified where these structural walls can be placed. I mean, some of it's voluntary. So on the front facade, voluntary. We don't have to put shear walls there. But we're working with BKG, which is a very comprehensive structural engineer that, some people call it over-engineering, but so they say, hey, like this, if you want this house to last forever and withstand earthquakes, this is what we do. So again, we start with a full ask, like, can we do all this? And so when we started looking at these potential shear wall locations, then there's the question of, I mean, anyone typically in new houses or major additions, remodels, construction does this shear wall work on the exterior just because it's much easier. You can apply full sheets of structural plywood to the exterior that's not interrupted, as if you do it on the inside, the floor itself between the levels is interrupting the shear wall. Still, it can be done. Still, it can be done on the interior. So our contractor said, well, it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier, not cheaper. It's a lot easier to strip the stucco, do all the structural work. Not only that, but to wrap the building with building paper, and that was another thing that we thought would be a great feature of being able to strip the exterior, because then we could wrap it with building wrap, and there again, it's not going to be discontinuous. It's going to be a continuous wrap. That is what the client is really trying to pursue. So we specifically asked the city, that's our intent. So we had them, that's that fourth Page and Turnbull report that they did was specific to the stucco and specific to the shear walls. And their response was, if shear walls are necessary, you can do them, but you can only do them in the locations where the shear walls occur. And then you would have to feather in, because that's going to happen next to the existing. Now we have a new shear wall, you're going to have to match that. And we're saying, gee, is that even possible? Because it's going to take a real craftsman to match that stucco finish. So we're just in the conversation of that now. So it's interesting that you identify that as a concern, because we are looking for direction in that very specific area. And it is an open conversation at the moment.
So let me just comment briefly. I'm a very strong proponent, as all board members know, of structural upgrades that preserve buildings, because these buildings are were never built for our current understanding of earthquake energy. So I don't want to discourage that in any way. I'm not discouraging that. The question is, in this house, because the interior of the existing library is such an unbelievably exquisite example of marquetry done in the early 1900s, if you do it inside, which my understanding from my structural engineering experience as a contractor can be equivalent to the outside, that it's a bad choice, no matter how you approach it. But the outside, I think, has more opportunity, even though the patching of the stucco will present challenges. Now, I think those challenges are certainly can be overcome, and I think the finished product will certainly look fine, especially if you use a elastomeric paint when you're done, because that tends to hide the shrinkage on the stucco. Anyway, my question was really targeted at how to preserve as much of the interior of those rooms with that exquisite woodwork as possible. I realized that some of that woodwork is going, and it looks to me like the entire dining room is going to end up, and the whole existing kitchen is going to be stripped for all the new beams, and sad, but that the dining room was, which is now going to be the new kitchen, was already painted anyway. I guess the sensitivity towards that that decision is pretty important, at least from a preservation of character defining features approach. So the other question, I could not tell from the drawings whether the new windows are going to be exactly the same in terms of operation, or just the same in terms of design.
So the new windows would be exact replicas in design, aperture opening, design, functionality.
So I imagine the plan is to use what they call retrofit double hung, what we used to call drop-ins. So you use the same frame, which of course has no energy consequence, and then you reproduce the sash. So if it's a double hung sash, it's going to remain a double hung sash. Okay, again, I'm a big proponent of that change, even though the original glass is lost. In the long term, that's a savings of the building and its features. Do you have a sense of what the entry door is clear, the existing entry doors, those 2 wide, 3 high French doors, that's not a typical configuration. Those are custom doors. So it's not home, not to correct you, but they didn't get them at Home Depot. Do you have any sense of when those were put in?
You know, there is a permit history in our packet, but I didn't see that. I didn't see documentation of when they enclosed that porch. It might have been so long ago that it was before we started documenting things. But I think, I mean, they definitely have the kitchen remodel that was done in the last couple of years documented, but that enclosure of the porch, I didn't come across, unless I'm mistaken, I didn't come across any information on that. And it might have been done without a permit, I don't know.
At one time in Palo Alto, you didn't have to have a permit to replace doors and windows. And
but
so,
that was, they enclosed the whole porch. So they enclosed that front porch. So I don't know when that was done.
So I'm familiar with this house because I used to live down the street from it. And at one point actually looked at it in the 1980s to buy. It was way too expensive for us at $80,000 when we looked at it. Should have bought it. And what I don't remember, to go on to the next question, is the what is called a non-historic glass window on the back. It's the existing northwest elevation that's going to be removed. It's noted on A6.1. It's near the rear. I can't remember whether that was there in 1980. Certainly in the 70s when the Hamilton property was peeled off. I think it was in the 70s, the front yard, and became its own, piece of land, independent lot. Sorry. That window could have been put in at that time, and that would be historic, because if it was done from 1980, around 1980, that's 42 years ago, and 45 years is the cutoff for, or is the period of time in which we start considering things that were added later. So,
David, are you talking about the leaded glass window? Is that what window?
right. Yes.
I see. Okay.
So, let's see. I had other issues in the discussion of course, we'll have about, the Secretary of Interior standards 2, 5, 9, and 10, which have been addressed, but we can talk later. But I guess the other thing, just the comment I'd like to make is something I heard at a seminars over and over and over, and that is there is no mitigation for demolition. Once demolition occurs, that's it. So anything that's demolished in this building ought to be really thoroughly considered. I know you've done a lot of work on this, and I applaud that. There's a lot of this building that's going away, and I wonder in totality if the building can retain its character if all these changes are made. I'm not talking about windows, change out windows, identical windows. I'm really talking about all of the sort of peripheral changes that appear to me to have a great deal of impact on this building. So thanks for your hard work, Margaret and staff. We'll let other board members go at this.
So I think Board Member Bauer's point, I'd like to have the answer to that question too. So maybe Page and Turnbull is the best people to answer this, but after this work is done, and I know it's a little hard to tell how much impact the structural work is going to have on the building itself, but let's just say it was not on our inventory and the work has been completed. Would this house be a category 2 on the inventory? Would it even be selected to be on the inventory? How historic will it be once it's modernized?
I can answer that. I'm Josh Bevan with Page and Turnbull. Thank you very much for inviting us to today's meeting. When we were evaluating the different proposals, the first full ask proposal, we saw right away that there would be several factors in how this residence at that time was proposed to be altered relative to its understood significance. As a 1904 classical revival style building designed by Blisson Faville. So we're considering what are the features of this property that remain right now that communicate that significance. Part of it is tied to a style, part of it's tied to a period. And that's how we developed our list of character defining features. So our feedback was that the degree of alteration was not just window replacement, but it also involved window relocation and really altering the somewhat formal balance that you could see on each facade. It's also a property that, as we've learned, has had an interesting history as far as the site development and how the public gets to experience the house from different perspectives. First, there was Hamilton Avenue and Hale Street. So plus the facade that is now facing a driveway. You really had 3 facades that, unlike a lot of other residences, had several prominent features, not limited to entrances, large windows, and even the rear of the house was designed with a sense of formality. There was symmetry there. So we're we're taking all of these things into account as far as how these contribute to the house's architectural character. Now we get to 2021, and the house is sort of hemmed in on one side by subdivision, and I think it was 1967. At that point, what was an entrance with a portico on Hamilton Avenue was removed, save for the actual entrance doors, which remain in place today. And then the lot has since been transformed into an L shape. But most of the house still retains features from that early period, that early design. They're just experienced in a different way. So we've seen in this revised design what we believe is an appropriate shift, excuse me, towards retention of most of the original window openings, a request to replace a door that no longer functions as a door as a window for safety purposes, again with a very compatible profile, light pattern. And then we've also seen that the alterations proposed are primarily targeted towards the rear of the property. These would include the deck, which I believe replaces a deck that was installed in the 1990s. And then, of course, the largest opening that will be introduced would be the rear sliding doors. And although that is a large opening, we felt that in this case, despite its scale, its impact on other historic features of the house was quite marginal. So that's kind of how we were interpreting the changes that we've seen in the revised design, which we do believe supports the house's continued designation as a Category 2 property.
So I just want to point out that currently we have 15 historic structures in Palo Alto that are Category 1s. And this house is Category 2. There are only 73 Category 2s in Palo Alto at the moment. So, right now this house is one of our 100 most significant properties in Palo Alto. I just am curious that you think this still would maintain its place in one of our 100 most significant historic buildings.
I do. I think that this house, because of the method that is being proposed to replace features such as windows with replication instead of just a completely sort of modern or new contemporary look, the house's scale, its relationship to the street that currently exists, its overall form. We can't say yet about the stucco and the texture, but the overall sense of the house's grandeur, we believe, would be retained. I just as Margaret had said, there is a balance involved in trying to figure out how to carry forward a historic resource in a way that is that allows for sustainability, efficiency, things that were not necessarily built into a property at the start. So I feel that it would still be one of the 100 or so most significant houses in Palo Alto, and certainly one of the great examples of Bliss and Faville's work in the San Francisco Bay Area, something that Palo Alto would continue to be proud of.
Thank you for the reassurance.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have other questions from the board?
I just one more for Margaret. Who's the contractor that you're currently thinking about using, if that's available?
Yes, the contractor for our project is Scott Plemons of Plemons Construction, and I'm sure that you know who he is.
Of course. Okay, great. Thank you.
And just another comment to getting back to that stucco issue. So it's kind of hard to see a clear path forward for us because, like you said, doing it on the inside, it has consequences. Doing it on the outside also has consequences. If we do it on the outside, which we are allowed to do, but just in those specific areas, we're afraid that the continuity would be lost, because when you have something old stucco and then you try to put new stucco, there's no way it's going to look seamless. So I guess back to our full ask, we're hoping to strip the whole entire, that sounds horrible, but we have a top grade contractor who's got the best people and access to the best people. So our hope is to be able to strip the entire exterior, do the structural work, do the building wrap. So the thermal quality of the house will be ensured. There's not going to be any water intrusion. That's what we'd like to ask for, but we're afraid to ask. I mean, we're not afraid to ask, like we have asked it, but there's just no perfect solution. I guess the perfect solution would be to be able to strip the entire exterior and redo the stucco. That would be the perfect solution. However, that might not meet the historic standards, but if we meet the historic standards, there's going to be a compromise in the quality of the work.
So I'd like to provide some insight from the contractor perspective and from my seminar learning. I think we need to, as a board, think about the stucco just like we would think about, say, cedar shingles on the outside of a building. None of it lasts forever. And the most significant thing is not to try to keep, say, a shingle or a plane of stucco just for that sake, but it is to repair it and put back the same thing that was there in the same finish when it comes to stucco. I think that this finish is fabulous. It's very unique. Not very many buildings in Palo Alto have it. And that's what makes this building one of the most significant character defining features for me. So the fact that you take all the stucco off, and I don't think all of it would come off, but you might take it to corners so that you can, preserve certain parts of it, and then put it back so that it looks the same. It's just like taking old shingles that have worn out and replacing them with new shingles. So I'm not at all hung up on removing the stucco to get shear walls. And in fact, doing it from the outside allows them to take off a 7/8 sheathing that's underneath that stucco and put a 1/2 inch piece of OSB. So you actually gain some space there in order to do the work that needs to be done. I think in the end, it will look the same. And what we want as a board is to preserve the look. I wouldn't take the dental molding off as an example because that's really, really unique. But I'd like to encourage the board members to think of this as a kind of not upgrade, not change, but just simply a renovation of that material, if you can.
Questions?
I have one. I was hoping Paige and Turnbull could comment on a couple of things. One is the current condition of the exterior stucco. And then also if they have any comment on, kind of the expected aesthetics of a patched stucco repair to accommodate the shear walls versus a more extensive replacement of stucco, and how that would visually impact the kind of integrated aesthetics of the exterior of the building.
There we go. Sorry, I was stuck on mute for a second. So the stucco, as far as we can tell, without doing an intensive inspection beyond the surface level, appears to be in good shape, but I I can't say as a materials conservation or from that perspective. That's not my particular expertise. The memorandum that we prepared incorporates feedback from our conservation technicians. And that sort of gets to the idea of approaching patching and what that might look like. As I understand, when you patch stucco, it is common for cracks to appear depending on how the mix of the existing stucco and the mix of the or composition in terms of its aggregate materials, how do those blend together? So there can be cracking which would need to be filled or taken care of, and that's I believe where something like elastomeric paint would come in as far as a finishing material. It seems like this would not be unlike mortar for bricks. When you repoint bricks or any sort of stone material, it is really important to make sure that the composition of that is a very good match with the historic. That way you don't end up with effervescence or things that leach out of the brick and you end up with white stains. So that's as far as I know about the stucco condition.
Well, I have a question for Mr. Powell, the applicant. What drew you to this house? It seems that the outside and your vision for the inside are very different. And I'm just curious, what made you say, I want this? It obviously wasn't the woodwork. I think a lot of people probably would have walked in and said, ooh, wood. But can you tell us a little bit about your attraction and your wife's attraction?
Sure. I must have passed the house, I don't know, 300 times in my lifetime before it came on the market, right? We live maybe a 5-minute drive away, and it's shielded by the hedging, but I think our broker referred to it as the grand dame of the block, right? And it's spectacular. I mean, there's I think Josh mentioned, and we've already categorized it as it's one of the 100 kind of most important historical resources that our city has to offer. And before studying it and getting into this process, I don't think I realized why. I just saw that it's magnificent. And so when it came on the market, it was just an opportunity to build our forever home. I think that our goal is to really, for the community, to preserve it and to steward it for the next 100 years or however long we get to stay there. The interior, I'll just say, there's a lot of wood. I think Mr. Board Member Bauer has been inside. It's I hear it's old growth redwood, which lasts forever. And so we've stumbled into some things where there are some structural upgrades that need to be made. Like originally we thought the foundation was really solid. Turns out there's some foundation work to do. We were actually marketed that the whole building was made of concrete. It's not made of concrete, but that was the marketing. And so as with any historical home, I think we've learned that it's 100 years old. And so there's some work to do to make sure it lasts another 100 years. But especially on the facade, we want to maintain the character. And I've really learned what that's about. And frankly, my wife and I and Margaret have had long nights talking about some of the earlier proposed changes on the full kitchen ask. And we felt like we've achieved kind of a balance here. So our intention isn't to, I think someone called it a party house, right? Like we have little children, we have a family, we want to raise them there. And we want this thing to last for a very long time.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for the question.
Margaret, my question to you is, you talk about the structural vulnerability of the house in terms of the basement and the attic, but looking at the plans, my original thought was just the amount of demolition on the first floor was adding a huge vulnerability to the building. Have you, your structural engineer, I mean, if you didn't do all that demolition on the first floor, is there still the vulnerability?
Well, with the demolition that's going to occur, there's state-of-the-art structural supports that are going to be in place. In the areas that we're taking walls out, we structurally amend that, or we just rebalance the loads of the entire house. So yes, we are opening up the existing dining room, sunroom, kitchen, and there are some walls that are being removed in those areas, but in place of the removed walls, we have a pretty intensive structural resupport system. I think the structural plans are part of the packet. I mean,
yes,
I know everyone loves studying structural plans. It's just the most exciting thing to do. But no, I see your point, but whatever structural elements are removed, they're replaced with steel, post beams, whatever's on the structural program. Because to get a permit, I mean, the engineer has to prove mathematically that the house, they do a structural lateral analysis to make sure that the entire house has the integrity and the codes don't get easier, they get more challenging every year. So, and he has 4 layers of floors to incorporate into a lateral analysis. So, and he's one of the best, well, he's one of the most thorough engineers, I think, that people turn to today, not because he has, a cheap and easy solution. It's because he has the best, most educated solutions. And that's why we're working with him, because we knew this was going to be a challenging project.
So do we want to move on to board member comments on the building?
Michael had a question, I thought.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I did. I was listening to all the comments right here, and I tend to agree strongly with David Bauer's assessment that to enter into a massive structural upgrade, if you want to call it an upgrade, really is going to impact the integrity of this house to a significant degree. My personal recommendation would be to not do the structural upgrade to the extent that is being proposed right here as far as affecting the exterior walls. This house has survived the 1906 earthquake. It's got pretty good structural capabilities as it stands right now. I live in a 1903 house on University Avenue that survived the 1906 earthquake without a lot of structural modifications. I think the wood framing characteristics of these older houses are very resilient to earthquake incursions. And I think when you talk about doing these massive structural interventions, you're going to destroy a lot of the integrity of this property. There's no getting around it. I think you're just buying into a real nightmare of problems. So I would encourage you not to do the structural upgrade to the extent that is being proposed. It's just too invasive. I think this is I didn't see any declaration on the project that it appears that it's a rehabilitation, which is by definition bringing a historic property into modern conditions for modern living, which I applaud you to do. But I don't think that the structural upgrades are going to provide you with the product you think you're going to get. I think you're buying yourself into a nightmare. And my background is mechanical engineering too, so I'm not advocating something that I would normally say it's a good idea, but I think just from this aesthetic standpoint, from preservation of the historic integrity, you're just buying into a real nightmare. I would encourage you not to do it to the extent that it's being proposed.
Hello? I would like to disagree. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to disagree. I think the structural should be done. I'm an architect, and having worked with buildings with stucco, I think the full replacement of the stucco would be the right way to go. You don't have the craftsmanship of 100 years ago. There's no one here that can do the replication of that original stucco. And so to try and match it with unskilled labor or unskilled craftsmen is going to be the wrong thing to do. To strip all the stucco and to replace it would be the right way to go. And there's no right way to do the wrong thing. So I highly recommend the structural be done and that the stucco be replaced.
Thank you, Gogo. So do we have other board member comments? I have a few.
Carolyn, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
We're still in the staff and presentation mode. Are we now going to go into discussion of the project?
Yes, I am planning to, I thought we were going to do questions to the applicants and staff. And now I think we're moving into our comments to them. Is that?
Okay, so I think what we do is close the public comment section for the time being, reserving the right to allow them to come back, and then we can get to board discussion. Is that right,
wait.
Amy?
Am I supposed to open the public comment section?
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Can I interject? And I just, for some reason, I'm stuck on this stucco. I'm stuck on the stucco. So we have, I mean, there's a variation of different recommendations, solutions, even the last between Michael and Gogo. Mike says, don't do it. Gogo says, do it. So we're still looking for a clear and sensible path forward. Obviously, our primary, our first choice would be to strip the entire stucco so we can do the structural upgrades and the building wrap and the thermal protection. So, but in terms of the stucco finish, so we just met with the contractor out there this week, and we were observing the finish that's there. And we observed that even in one small area, there's a variation of the texture itself. So we were trying to think, oh, was this area already replaced and repaired, or it's a very rough, you know, there's this one term called pebble dash, I think, but it's not pebble dash, but it has that very chunky, heavy, it looks like oatmeal or something. It has a very heavy, but okay, so we accept that it's very heavy, but there's variations of it within the category of stucco texture, whatever it's called, heavy oatmeal, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it looks like someone just threw stucco in a horizontal sort of way, because some of the stucco we thought, well, maybe they threw it on and then it starts sagging. I don't know if it's the paint over the years. So I guess my point in bringing this up is that there's a variation in the texture unto itself. So in the event that we remove and replace, we will do our best to replicate. However, like we would probably pick one sample of the texture to replicate, because if we're truly going to replicate it, we would be doing it super heavy, not so heavy, chunky, not so chunky, thrown on, you know what I'm saying? I know I'm not making sense, but
right.
I just wanted to point out that in the event that we do strip the stucco, we will do our best to replicate, but what's existing is not consistent. That was a better way to saying it, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair Willis, we do need to have open public testimony and see if there are any, because I do notice there are 3 attendees that may wish to speak to the board.
I would like to open it up to public comment. We have a timer.
Yes, we have a timer up, and our first speaker is Priya Graves. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
No, you're correct. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I share the concern that with the magnitude of the changes proposed, this House will not retain its fabulous category to wonder, let's put it that way. I live in a 1904 house that has never had a lot of the upgrades that you're talking about. It made it through the 06 quake, it made it through the 89 quake. A few minor things needed to be fixed, but you know, other than bolting it to its foundation and a few things like that, nothing has been done to it. And I feel perfectly safe living in it. I really don't know that mucking about with a house to this extent allows it to remain historic. And I would like to hear the board discuss that. That really concerns me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Priya.
See, I don't see any raised hands. We have one more speaker, John Carroll Richards. I mean, attendee, but they haven't raised their hands.
And they also sent in a letter, a very nice letter, sort of stating, I don't know if the board all had an opportunity to see that this morning. I think it came in late last night and early this morning. So let me just ask, how many of the board members did see the letter from I think it was Mrs. Carroll?
I did.
Okay, so most of us. So I'm going to close the public comment and move into board member comments or discussion. Does anybody want to start us off? Go, and Mike, will you put your hands down so we can start fresh? Your little, raise your hand symbol. Thank you. So does somebody want to lead us off with comments?
I can, if why don't you do it, Carolyn, or I mean.
I will do it.
Okay.
So my first thought is that the interior plan is really incongruous with the exterior. And I wonder if the next people who buy the house are going to relate more to the interior of the house than to the exterior, and that they would want to make the exterior more compatible with the very modern interior, contemporary interior. And I think that what I hope you're aware of is that by creating this very contemporary interior, it's not classic the way the house is now. It's a very modern interpretation, or very contemporary of the moment interpretation of this interior that's not necessarily going to be in fashion in 20 years. That you're ripping out this historical woodwork by a man who really, wood was his life. I mean, the original owner made his money in the lumber industry. This house, more than, I can think of other houses in Palo Alto, but this house really tells a story through its interior woodwork. And I think that the combination of the structural work that's necessary, because the interior is being deconstructed, the losing the story of the original owners through the removal of the woodwork, and the fact that the interior and the exterior are suddenly telling very, very different stories. I think it puts the whole house at risk. Not from you. I'm saying you can do your version, but what you're creating is not a classic design. It's not something that's going to, I mean, I would be really amazed if it remains in the form that you're generating for 100 years. It's just too much conflict. And I mean, the fact that that you have to do those enormous shear walls. That doesn't speak to the structure now. That speaks to what you're trying to make it do that it wasn't really built to do. So I hope that you will go home and have a moment of where, no, you really don't need to go this far, that this house really does have some value in its present form. There are more moderations you can make that would really ensure that it did survive for another 100 years. And I know it's really hard for us to look at our individual houses, and I feel compelled to say mine's in 1909. We've all been sort of prefacing it, and I think it does shape your worldview when you live in an old house and you're surrounded by something that's been here for a while. I think it reflects how you value other things. And I just think that, you know, from my point of view, I find this whole project is putting the house at risk. I don't think that, I think what's been discussed about the stucco is, it's a huge point. It's that suddenly you're going to have a new building, and it might have a classic form on the outside, but it's not, its historic fabric is going to be pretty obscure. And I think that the things that might happen or could happen along the way are frightening. I mean, I'm with Mr. Mann. I just think that it's such a huge structural project, trying to make the house do something it was not designed to do, that it's putting it at risk.
I'd be happy to comment. I've done most of the talking in this meeting, and I apologize for that. I had a couple of thoughts about this. I share Gogo's feeling about how to deal with the stucco, and again, encourage all of us to think of stucco as just the material and the finish. And what Margaret points out is that there are obviously numerous patches, and they're not the same. And the fact that new stucco would go up there, I see as just the same thing as new shingles where there were shingles. So I'm not in any way opposed to that. And I think the structural upgrades are really important, because making it through one earthquake is no guarantee that you'll make it through another. And this building has, unlike many buildings of that era, it has very large interior spaces that do not have any structural support, because they didn't know what support to build in 1907 or 1904. So it's important that that be done. And I think the engineer and the client and Margaret can make a decision about just how much of this needs to be done. But so let me focus on this just for a moment. I looked at the exterior elevations. It seems to me the front elevation structural work probably can be done from the inside better, and then the front facade is untouched. On the left-hand side, I'm now looking at page STSW, which is page 51 in our packet. It's a plan page. On the rear elevation, it looks to me like virtually the entire elevation is going to be changed if the large door is installed. And I have a problem with that door, so, which I'll bring up in a moment. So I think doing that whole facade probably is okay. When you get to the long side facades, again, on the northwest elevation, this is the elevation that faces University Avenue. Almost every single, tall, uninterrupted panel is involved here. You might start at the chimney, which is close to the rear, and move forward and just do the entire side. I think that's the best way to deal with this. Cutting it up isn't going to work. And like, again, on the other side, you find a space where either the plane changes or you have something that interrupts it, so you can go to a corner and do it that way. In terms of, next comment is about the changing of windows and doors, the windows and windows to the doors. Don't have a problem with the front entry. The current entry is obviously not there. I have a big problem with that large, massive glass wall that's going to be installed. It is so uncomplimentary and incompatible with the design of the building. I just can't see it. And it just seems to me like a sore thumb. And it's, when you look at this house, which is really kind of a rectangle, I just have a lot of trouble with this design element. It just seems to me totally incompatible. On the kitchen, the door next to that long glass wall, as I looked at the exterior, the existing elevation and the proposed elevation, sorry, I have to keep flipping back and forth between these. I don't think that I have any problem with that, because that particular elevation is almost identical, with the exception of a door being changed out for a window. So when one looks at that, there's it's a very subtle difference, and I think that's compatible. On the other hand, on the southeast elevation, there is a replica windows with a 4-foot original door now becoming a fixed window. I think that particular elevation is quite different. And I don't see why you couldn't put doors back there and just seal them, make them inoperable, no hardware. So they serve the same function and they replicate what was there exactly, rather than do something that's close. Those doors and that elevation can be, the glazing can be changed out and you still have the same look. Those are the things that I'm most concerned about in terms of how this will look in the end. I think after the stucco, if it's removed and they do the structural upgrades and the stucco is replaced, this building will look like it looks now. I don't see this as being any significant change. And again, we're not preserving a particular piece of material like glass or stucco or shingles. We're attempting to preserve the look that those materials provide and the character that they define. That's how I approach this. So those are my general comments. I would, again, encourage owners and Margaret to try to save as much of the interior of this building as possible. I think Carolyn's comment about what's popular now is really on point. I worked for 40 plus, almost 50 years in the construction business, building things. And the things that I built in the beginning of my career simply don't exist now. And they were the best things we all thought we should put in our houses. So what's popular now, it's just not likely to be the same. Even the Eichlers are now, after 60 years, considered architectural style that people like, but they weren't particularly popular in the 50s and 60s when they were built, except for the fact that they were extraordinarily inexpensive. So everything changes. And I like to think, when I make decisions about or try to decide what we should do here, what in 50 years will the people say about the decisions we make now? Will they say, what were they doing? Why did they do this? Or this is a fabulous thing. I don't know what the answer to that is. I won't be here, but that's how I try to answer the question. Sorry to be so verbose.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, I think, I guess one last, okay. Mike, you want to go next?
Yes, I'll go next. I think the comments about the back facade of the house with the 4 panel sliding glass doors. I think that's completely out of character with this house. It does not harmoniously agree with the original architectural intent. I would encourage the property owner to reconsider that, to do something that's more contextually in keeping with the original architecture of the house. I don't understand at all the desire to replace the existing handrail system with something with a bunch of the wires on it, which is very contemporary look for the back deck. I think that's a big mistake. I would encourage you to retain a balustrade system that's more in keeping with the era, the contextual architecture of the house. So the only other comment, I'll go back to the structural proposal. I was involved with the doing a structural reinforcement of some of the buildings at Moffett Field, which was a little different approach than is being considered here, but that was done from the exterior, and it was done by increasing the thickness of the walls and using a process called shotcrete and adding steel into the exterior of the walls. And when that was done, and I think you're going to end up with something sort of like this, you increase the thickness of the walls and the windows read differently with a different depth, a recessed depth from the surface. So you should be aware that if you start tampering with stucco and exterior structural modifications, you're going to change the window placement and how it reads from the outside. I think that's all the comments I have right now.
Thank you. I think that I think salvage is a really interesting issue here, that most of the woodwork that's inside that house, you couldn't even buy today. So it seems that if it's no longer wanted inside that house, there should be places where it would be in high demand. And I don't know how you find those places, but I would hope that you could make an effort to get the word out to architects and salvage places that this building is being, I want to say, demolished. The interior is being demolished. And that it would be nice if some of that old woodwork that's no longer available could be available to people who would be able to take advantage of it. So do we have any other comments from the board? I say we wrap it up, and thank you very much for bringing this to us. I know that it's hard to listen to when people have different opinions, but we appreciate you listening to us. It means a lot. This building obviously is of value to the Palo Alto community, and we hope that it does stand for another 100 years and as closely as it can remain to its original construction, the better it is for the town. Thank you. So I think we can move on to our discussion of the work plan results. Amy, do you want to lead us through this one?
Sure. Before we do, is there anything, I see the applicants and our consultants are still with us. I wonder if there's any closing remarks from the team there, either staff team or applicant owner. Okay.
Actually, can I just clarify? So moving forward, so it doesn't sound like there's a motion or a vote or anything on this project. It was just to present it to you and listen to your feedback. Was that the primary goal? Is there any? And I'm just thinking of, where do we take this? We just take your comments under consideration and move forward as planned, or Or is there any other steps that we take? I just want some clarity on that.
Yeah, I believe we were talking about, because up until now we've been just having conversations and having support from our consultant. There hasn't been there's been a formal building permit application, but it would be nice to solidify this process with a formal historic review application, and then there can be, we can include the comments that came from the HRB in a document regarding what transpired, and the advice and recommendations of the board as a collective. I think because it's not a discretionary application, there's not technically, the approval with conditions or such. But I would like to have a formal transmittal capturing the board's individual comments.
So do you want to, is that you're encouraging some kind of motion of board review? I guess is the right way to put this.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to have some kind of a straw poll, I suppose, of or just sentiments expressed with more. Not everyone has kind of weighed in on the key aspects. I know we've gotten a lot of good feedback for the applicant. So it's just a little tricky because it's not a discretionary application that we need, up or down, that kind of thing.
So I would be willing to provide a motion of board. I'm not quite sure I can remember the term. It's not board consent because we're not consenting to it. It's a motion of board opinions or something. Sorry.
Consensus, maybe?
Yeah, maybe
Consensus.
board consensus. So I would propose that we, or I would move that the board has considered the project and made several recommendations for changes. And by the way, I'm open to adding to this after I'm finished. That the first change is that the rear glass door be reconsidered in a more compatible, so that the design is more compatible to the original house. Second, that the structural upgrades be tailored as much as possible to preserve as much of the interior and exterior as possible, but still achieve the kind of safety and performance so that the building will survive earthquakes. And third, that, well, actually, let me just leave it at that. That there are other smaller issues with windows and openings that might be reconsidered in a more conservative manner so that they're more conservative and compatible with existing design. And I'm open to anyone else adding to that list or subtracting if things available, appropriate.
David, would you consider a comment regarding the balustrade and the handrail system on the back deck?
Of course, I think all the things we've discussed can be included here, but I was trying to articulate the things that I felt were most important. So if you'd like to add to that, you certainly can. My feeling is that the deck is a completely new addition, can be removed without affecting the building. And so I see that as less of an issue, but if you'd like to add that, I'm certainly open to that and welcome.
I think it'd be appropriate to add that my comment to your list. It certainly, visually, it has an impact upon the back of the structure. And it raises questions. What are we doing here? Introducing a contemporary treatment to the deck. It impacts the total contextual feel of the house.
Sure, it's the compatibility as opposed to differentiation. It's wildly differentiated and wildly incompatible is the way I would look at it. That, I think, is what you're saying.
Well spoken, sir.
Well, we're not doing the cable thing. That sorry, that's on there. We're not, I shouldn't speak, but.
Okay, well, Margaret, no need to be defensive about it. It's just, we're just trying to, you know, gather this. I'm sorry, I'm not running the meeting. Alyssa, you look like you had something.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, the deck, it just seems so easily, separable and differentiable from the structure that, it to me, while it may not be in keeping with the style, like it is easily separable and not confusing.
Right, so I'm that's how I feel about it, but I think I'm willing to include anything. Carolyn, did we miss something? Did you have anything you want to add? Sorry, I'm not running the meeting. I apologize.
I know. It's hard to put a motion together. I support yours. I'll second your motion. I think there's a billion little things we could stick in there, but truthfully, my big thing is the differentiation between the inside and the outside, and I just think this building is headed in a bad way. I'm sad for it. But do we have other comments before I call for a vote?
Gogo, did you want to add anything?
No, I think we can go forward if we're going to be considering that back deck and the windows and stuff. So.
And of course, Kristen, haven't heard from you today, but I don't want to leave you out. Anything you would like to add to the motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I think that's my motion, our motion.
Okay, and I second it, and all in favor? Do we need a roll call vote for this one, Amy?
Yes, is Medina available?
Yeah, I'm right here. We'll conduct the roll call vote. Chair Willis?
Yes.
Vice Chair Peace?
Yes.
Board Member Bauer?
Yes.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich?
Yes.
Board Member Henrik?
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon?
Yes.
Board Member Weimer? Oh, sorry.
I can't vote.
Right, apologize because you are an applicant. So motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us again. And Margaret, we will take you back as a board member now.
Thank you.
And let's move on to our work plan. Amy, do you want to lead us through this?
Yes, sure. I'm going to share my screen. So here we are with our annual work plan, and we discussed this a bit at the last meeting at our retreat in January. We all are aware that annual work plan is a kind of a new requirement that City Council started last year. Last year, we submitted a work plan in June, and it's led us up to this point. The next work plan is due in April to Council, so they will be receiving all of the work plans of boards and commissions. So these are the types of things that we're asked to do, is to review the results of the work plan that we just are finishing up, I guess next month is, and then any of these metrics or participation, it can be comments on that to include in our report to the council. And then of course we have our new work plan going forward to discuss. So also aside from that, as you are aware, we every year provide to the State Office of Historic Preservation the annual CLG report, and that time frame is from October 2020 to September 2021, and that's where we will collect the trainings that the board members have gone through and any activities there. So this was this work plan year that we're in now that goes through March. We had targeted several activities to be later in the year, but 1, 2, 3, 4 of these were just considered ongoing. One of those was to reconstitute an ad hoc committee on the Taylor Mills Act and consider outreach approach. So we do have plans to discuss that next month at our March meeting. These are kind of the to-dos that I could see in our existing plan that we're still involved in. We're looking at an outreach discussion next month. We have plans to discuss what we might do for Historic Preservation Month in May. You know, will the HRB have any role there? We have, you know, we are going in March to council to ask for resources to help us with this inventory update per our comp plan L711. We have some activity with the ad hoc committees regarding, you know, what we're doing with mapping and, you know, kind of identifying what's already been identified as historic resources. Those were provided in today's packet. And then we have the Taylor's Mills Act program. We talked about discussing that next month. Look back to the September 2021 staff report. So this is an idea for a presentation next month. And then here is the proposed work plan for April to March, April this year to March of next year. So you'll notice I put into yellow text some ideas for tweaking this main topic or goal with some additional work. And that would be to update this bulletin, which was last updated or adopted by the HRB in October of 2016. So looking forward to making some changes to that to be consistent with the comprehensive plan that was adopted at the end of 2017 and what our current processes are. That bulletin was included in your packet today. Then we have to enhance this goal of supporting comp plan policies, this hope that we will get to launch this policy L711, which is to update the inventory. And that requires support from council and resources to have our consultant help us. But the ad hoc committee has begun its work to identify whether some of those are still in existence. When I say them, I mean the deemed eligible resources that came from the 1998 survey. So looking forward to that in hopefully the first quarter of this next plan year. Then we have down here another add-on to this outreach goal from the year that we're still in, our work plan year. And we'll discuss that next month about outreach. But there also is, the opportunity to discuss, in the future year, maybe next year at this time, we'll be able to tackle discussion about the historic preservation ordinance, reassessing that, maybe a report on its effectiveness or ineffectiveness, as the case may be. And then again, we just mentioned this, but we can talk about this next month about finalizing the outreach approach and how that would be brought forward to council in a formal report. So that's that. And then I've captured that in this slide that we can come back to or not, just what I was saying, changes to make. And then there are some possible future work plan items that we can talk about for, as we work towards a work plan for the 2023-24 timeframe. And these could include, getting a grant application ready for districts evaluation, some other things that were brought up, reevaluating, looking at our existing inventory to see, are they still existing and do those need updating? And then there's things about the ordinance that don't have clarity as far as how resources are downgraded or removed from the inventory. So I think that is the end of my presentation. I do have just in the packet, we did provide these maps from 2016. This shows the category 3 and 4 properties that are located outside of downtown and Professorville that are, at risk because of the way the ordinance is written. And then we have the inventory properties altogether and the districts. The 2 historic districts are shown. This does not show the Eichler, 2 historic Eichler districts. And then we have this index map that was provided to the board. This was in an email. This is the index of all such, all of the category 1s through 4s, the districts, and those that are deemed eligible from our survey in 1998 and more recently since the comp plan adoption. So this is, the first map, which has a lot of resources, the second map, which has, 1 or 2 resources, and then the third map that has, again, the Green Meadow Eichler area and a couple of other resources, such as College Terrace. So that concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to unshare my screen or go back if anyone would like. I think what I'll just do is show this. This is a task we need to get done and get into the staff report to the council for the April meeting.
Amy, do we want to go sort of in order so that we go through our current work plan and say, talk about how we're going to respond to that briefly?
Sure. Yeah, let's start with that.
And then move on to what we want. Because my understanding is we wanted to go to council and talk briefly about how we have progressed through this. Is that true?
Yes, that can be included in a report that goes, I don't know that they're going to talk about it, but they're going to receive all of the work plans. And
Okay.
the comments on, yeah.
So do you really need any input from us on this, or is this something that you feel pretty clear where we are?
Yeah, I mean, unless there are comments we have a couple things we're still working on here. The other things are ongoing. So we're, I think if anyone has comments on, the equity in the work, which was a phrase that came out, or community participation. I mean, we have kind of rare participation from the community in our board meetings. But if anyone has anything to say about that, I guess you can speak about that, and I can include that in a report. Yeah, so it's what I'm talking about is this piece here that says
area in need of improvement.
Okay, so we can say that. I don't know how it would be improved, but we are talking about it next month as far as outreach. So that'll be an opportunity.
Okay, so outreach comments next month.
Yes, we're looking at next month being, we were targeting that for a discussion about outreach, this goal here of improving outreach. So these are the items that we're still kind of working on during this plan period. So Chair Willis and I will get together and create some agenda topics for, I guess, the first meeting of March, which would be in person, and that would be really up to the ad hoc committees to present on their areas of work, as well as chat about this outreach. So I think the Mills Act and the outreach discussion would happen in kind of organically without a staff report on March 10th.
That sounds great.
Do you think we should remind ourselves who are on those ad hoc committees? Because I think I was going to be on the community outreach and maybe the Mills Act. I think maybe those are combined.
I don't know if we actually had a community outreach committee. I thought we still sort of stuck with our 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which are
Margaret,
these?
yeah, Margaret, you are on the Mills Act.
I knew that, but I was. Thanks for I needed the reminder, I guess.
So I think for next month or next meeting, when we talk about community outreach, let's all just kind of think of as many ways as we possibly could do community outreach. And then we'll just have a general discussion at our first meeting in March, and then maybe we could make some decisions at our second week about how we want to proceed. I mean, our second meeting, sorry, about how we'd like to proceed with community outreach.
Yeah, at least maybe the focus at the second meeting could be the Historic Preservation Month, because that's coming up, you know.
Oh,
or is
true. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds good. So moving, so we'll summarize that, and the HRB will see it before we take anything to council, right?
Yes, I can include
Okay.
that in the next packet as far as
Okay.
any tweaks to the comments on the last work plan.
Okay. And I like that we're getting into, now that we've moved on to 22, 23, I like that we have not just ongoing, we have things we actually are gonna do and be done with, which is very appealing to me.
If I could just make a brief comment about this, maybe it's just me, but I've just been struggling with how interrelated and linked some of these objectives are. And when I think about that, about how to approach them, but it seems to me we came to a pretty solid consensus at the last meeting that we really need council support. We need a plan in that they agree to, and we need to get financial resources or request them, at least settle out whether we're going to get them or not. And I guess I'm just not entirely clear how the rest of the year unfolds in terms of doing that. For example, I'm seeing on page 83 that we would receive funds requested March 21, 2022. But I don't still understand how that funds request and the plan gets put together, submitted, how we review it, and how each of these things happen in some order so that we actually get them done this year. And to make it simple, it seems to me one of our top priorities is upgrading this inventory, and a lot of these other things like outreach and even the Mills Act is a potential additional incentive for people who have properties that have been judged to be eligible, who may be interested in actually getting them listed. How this is all going to get, how this all gets done. Maybe Amy could help me with this, but I don't want to take a super deep dive into it, but that's the thing I have the most trouble kind of getting here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have concerns as well on staff because, you know, this is something that we're going to council with. The date is March 21st. It hasn't happened yet. This is, you know, wishful, hopeful, effort to get a commitment from staff to provide us the resources to, you know, launch this implementation, which is the you know, including outreach to property owners. So this is like the biggest thing for this plan year, and it all depends on what council does. And what they're doing on March 21st is related to the whole SB 9, you know, continued discussion that they began back in December, the urgency ordinance that said, hey, you know, we called out that we had at risk, you know, eligible properties that have not been put on the inventory and are subject to SB 9 projects. So, you know, this is the big deal. If we do get commitment and funding, then we can proceed. If we don't, it's going to be very difficult with the resources that we have to do this. Again, this down here would be the second half of the program year. So meaning at the end of, you know, 2022, if we can review the ordinance and report out on the effectiveness of it or ineffectiveness, that's something that I thought could be manageable, but you know, and then this part about the Mills Act, you know, this was one of those programs that could drop off, because if we do get this funding and such, this will be where our focus is and our energies. So that could drop off to the next program year.
Okay, so will staff develop the first draft proposals and budget and set of tasks and deliverables?
Well, we already have received on this first one, the March 21st, we already received a proposal, a scope and cost estimate that we're going forward to council with to request funding. So that is in process right now. These other ones do not have associated resources figured out. So that's, putting this towards the end of the program year is why that is that way.
Okay, but if it's in progress, when would we first see some results of that? It just seems we have one meeting before the 21st in March. It's just a few days, it's really 2 weeks out from now. I'm just wondering where our input to the specifics are before it goes to council.
Oh, I'm not sure there is an opportunity for input on the specifics as far as what we're asking of council specifically for what's going in March related to that.
Okay.
I can share what the cost estimate, is, are you asking to see the scope of the consultant scope?
Again, I just have, one thing is upgrading or refreshing the inventory and determining what's out there that's qualified, that still exists, which is not listed. And the other is an outreach program to go encourage adoption. And I know there's been a lot of discussions about the sensitivity around this and how it unfolds. So whatever you're willing to share, I would like to see. Let's put it that way. But I fear that we may come out the other side of a council decision and not be as clear on how that all happened as we might otherwise be, and make sure that if we do have some input, that's at least considered for presentation in that council consideration.
So I think it would, for one at least, would like to have the materials that council is going to receive regarding this, because I just think it would be helpful for us with any discussions we have with the community or anybody on council to sort of know what we're asking and what the framework is, because I know it's in regard to SB 9. So I think it would be nice for us to have sort of a clearer sense of how council is receiving it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yes. So when the report is written and published, I'll certainly send a link to that report.
Okay.
Prior to that report, I can certainly send the scope of work that we requested our consultant to prepare, to help us think through, like, for instance, how many meetings with the HRB, how many meetings with the council, what the outreach could entail, and is there support with a person, because staff doesn't have the bandwidth to do all the outreach.
Well, I would really like it if we could devote our next meeting to going over whatever draft or situation that's in it, and put all of our time into really considering that, because this just seems like such a big task, and to really put a dent into it, to do something effective this year, something that actually has an impact, is a big challenge. So if that's possible, and other members of the board are agreeable, I would really like to just, if you can get anything together about what's going to go to the council, let's try to have it available to us to read in advance of our next meeting, and let's drill down into that. It should get at least much time as this one property got today, it seems to me, because in a way, and this is an incredibly important property we discussed today, but this is huge in terms of what happens over the next several decades. And I just don't feel like I have a lot of trouble getting a handle around it when I really try to think about how it might be implemented. So anyway, that's my opinion. I'd appreciate any feedback from anybody else if they have it at this time in that regard.
I think that sounds really doable. I think we can frame all our committee reports in the context of, you know, analyzing our work plan and how we want to, what we exactly are looking for from staff and council. So I think it works fine, even, you know, with the way we were framing our, I mean, we can reframe our topic to be work plan and have the committee reports be a subset of that. But I don't think it's going to be any different one way or the other. Same result.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is at the next meeting, I can certainly, I mean, there's not a published report yet. I have provided content to those who are writing the report. Once that content is accepted, perhaps I could grab, you know, the paragraph and share that with the board as far as how that's going to be, you know, the tone of that paragraph and such. And, you know, that's, I guess, what I can offer, perhaps.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
And then
Sure,
the scope.
And then as a board, we can, you know, have a motion and move it forward. I mean, so that it comes from the board as you know, the council will appreciate that. I think we're moving it not as a staff report, which is important, but really as a board initiative.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the HRB has colleagues memos, you know, but this is kind of what this feels like, is a sort of colleagues memo that that's
Right.
a request.
Yeah, we're speaking up. I think Christian's exactly right here. We need to focus on this. And also, if the Mills Act is going to be pushed off the next year, sounds like even if we can reach an agreement about what the basis of the Mills Act proposal should be, that there is no staff money to actually move it forward, then let's push it out. We don't, you know, it's there. I think it's almost done. I don't anticipate creating an application form in the subcommittee. I don't even know how to begin to do that. I think that's staff work. So,
well, the dilemma to me is, you know, however this public outreach, let's assume we fix up this inventory, whatever this public outreach is going to be, however it's going to be, how direct or indirect, what's made public and what's done quietly, however this gets sorted out. It seems to me that we have to be able to at least not only articulate what being listed on having some historic status to your property means, but what potential incentives there are in doing so. And Amy did a great job in the last meeting, sort of running off the top of her head, several of them. And the Mills Act is just one more piece that can be thrown in there. And, you know, as much as I question whether it will make a material difference based on the economics of residential homes at Palo Alto, a lot of people have expressed how embarrassing it is that of all the cities on this peninsula, we really don't have one. It just seems to me we really need to understand how those incentives are going to be put in place in order to have an effective messaging when we do the outreach. So those are the things that kind of keep me up at night when I think about HRB. So thank you.
So sort of along those lines, I think one of the things we need to make peace with staff and council are fees for HRB items. Oh, I feel like we are more service for the community than for the individual homeowners, that our interest in maintaining these historic properties is for the benefit of the community, and to have the homeowners cover additional costs for that doesn't really seem like an incentive to me. I think the immediate thing is when we identify these, well, the ones that have already been, properties that have already been identified as National Register eligible, are we going to charge people to actually review these and put them on the inventory? Amy?
Well, this is not clear. And I mean, this is not clear. The ordinance doesn't give much guidance at all on this. You know, if somebody came forward now with a request to be placed on the inventory, there's, you know, it's cited in the chapter 1649 in the municipal code, but it's silent as to, you know, what the fees are for such things. We do have a fee schedule that sets forth fees. They're not super expensive for historic review. But yeah, I could certainly bring that forward as information for the board to look at as they look at, you know, the incentives that we do offer.
Yeah, I think that would be good to know. I mean, I really feel like preservation is a community benefit, and, you know, great, you know, people get to live in these lovely old houses, but, you know, I truly feel like I'm a caretaker for mine, and that, you know, I get them for a while and hopefully they will live beyond me, which is part of the reason I was so devastated by hail. That was pretty tough to look at and realize that there's a limited amount we as a community are currently doing to preserve our resources. So I would like us to sort of reframe preservation in Palo Alto, and anything that might be looked on as a detriment, I would like to sweep away.
I'd like to say, I'd like to demystify it. I think just there's a lot of bad information out there in fear and loathing, and it needs to be addressed clearly and in a way that actually reaches the public. So
I'm totally in support. I'm unfortunately I have to leave. I didn't think we would go on this long, so I apologize for my early departure. I will look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks in March in person.
Oh, that's right. Person.
So,
take care, David.
thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have an 11 o'clock coming up as well. So
Okay. Time check. Do we want to, I don't think we need any action on the work plans at this point, do we, Amy?
I mean, not, I think we've lost our board member, so I haven't seen the staff report that's going to council, but I'll ask what the timeline is on that. We do have an opportunity to continue this discussion to March 10th, since you are meeting. That's going to be an in-person meeting. So yeah, if you want to continue the discussion.
I was thinking, let's continue the discussion to our next meeting, and I'll make a motion in a minute, but only because I think it would be good for us to approve these minutes while they're still somewhat fresh in our minds, while we still have a quorum. So do we have a motion to continue the work program to next March, to our first March meeting?
whatever that motion is, I make it. So.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, and all in favor, no discussion, all in favor? Aye.
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 And it carries unanimously. Is that close enough? Okay. So on the minutes, do we need a voice vote on each one?
Yes.
Okay. So
for me, a quick clarification, I didn't attend these meetings. So
that's right.
I wasn't here.
You're off the hook.
All right.
But I understand if we have 4 and there's only 6 members that would be eligible to vote, we're fine, right? For a quorum?
Yes, and we do have, you know, a quorum present, even if she abstains from the votes.
Okay, great. So on October 28th. Is that the first set? Yes. Do we have any corrections or whatever's? Yeah, I had some minor English, but I'm gonna let it go. So do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
And Medina, would you?
Conduct a roll call vote. Yep. Chair Willis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Peace.
Yes.
Board Member Bauer absent. Board Member Eagleston Sislevich abstain. Board Member Henrik.
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon. Board Member McKinnon.
You're muted.
I'll give you a yes.
Thank you. Board Member Weimer.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. On the December 9th meeting, I do have a marked up set of minutes somewhere, but I lost them. Has anybody else done corrections to those minutes? Okay, I guess we'll let them fly. I feel like they're so long, nobody's going to read them ever again. So do we have a motion to approve the December meeting, the minutes from December 9th?
I move to approve the meeting minutes of the meeting that occurred on December 9th, 2021.
And a second?
I second it.
And I will conduct the vote. Chair Willis.
Approve.
Vice Chair Peace.
Approved.
Board Member Bauer absent. Board Member Eagleston Sislevich abstain. Board Member Henrik.
I have to abstain because I left that meeting early.
Thank you. Board Member McKinnon.
Approve.
Board Member Weimer.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0-2 with two board members abstaining.
Thank you. Do we have any board members' questions, comments, complaints, anything before we adjourn?
Is there anything that we should be working on in preparation for our next in-person meeting? Do we have any homework?
Well, I think our homework is how to respond to the work plan in relation to our committee topics. So I think we're going to mostly focus on the work plan. I think I kind of do agree that the Mills Act isn't going to progress until we get further along with other things. I feel like we have some other things to accomplish, and then it will be clearer. And also, I think we'll have a better chance with council if we've sort of made some steps along the way. So I see that committee is kind of stepping back for now, but if there are other incentives that would be less involved to implement, I think that would be a good thing to hear from that committee. But generally, I think we want to work on how to get through our work plan, how to be effective, what we really need to accomplish. And I think that that's a really good goal for our next meeting. So any further comments from the board before I adjourn?
From staff. So we'll send you some specifics out because being back in person in a room together carries with it. I mean, we'll see what the state of the emergency is at that point. Hopefully I don't know. For now, Santa Clara County is, wear masks, et cetera, be vaccinated, and all of that. So we might struggle a little bit for our first meeting back. If there are people arriving in the chambers that we need to check their vaccine cards and all of that, it's going to be a thing.
So
to
we're going to
relaunch
need to
it.
show our vaccine cards, but you'll send out kind of a little
Yeah, and I'll get something from the
synopsis
clerk.
of what
Yeah.
we need. Okay, well, good. I think this will be sort of a nice casual conversation meeting to get used to the new protocols too. So that's nice that we won't have a lot of formal interactions. So good. Thank you for alerting us to that one. We're looking forward. I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys in person. I think it's, yeah, I think a lot of, you know, the Zoom dynamic is just different. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
In a second?
I second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Right.
And thank you very much. And I'll see you all in person in March, unless things change. Hopefully not, but that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Bye.